Hello there, everyone. Welcome back to TTOR. Welcome back to the TTOR show, and welcome to a very special episode. Now, this guest we have on here is somebody who has actually been on the TTOR show many times in the past, but it has been a while. Please welcome Josh Who.
Thanks for having me.
As you see, guys, from the thumbnail and the title of this live stream, this episode, today we're going to be talking about an alternative to Twitter that I'm pretty sure nobody watching this, or at least most people watching this, have never actually heard of before, called Loop. But but before we get into talking about Loop, we need to talk about why we're even why we're even holding Loop up as an alternative to Twitter at this point, even though there are several alternatives to Twitter technically in the alt tech world. But I just need to use the power of screen sharing in order to best illustrate the point. So at this point, there have been alt tech alternatives to YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook for many years now, at least since 2016. Although I think Minds is the oldest because I think it started in late 2015. But let me see. There we go. Oh, hold on. I got to check one other thing first. Okay, there we go. All right, now we can share that screen. So I have on screen you can see SimilarWeb on screen, right, Josh?
Yep, I see it.
So SimilarWeb is a website that tracks web traffic for various websites, not just on like the desktop versions of them, but also on like their apps if they have any or whatever else there is to track web traffic for. Minds is a site that back in like 2016, 2017, part of 2018 used to get millions of visitors per month, and they were a thriving, growing, active social media site that was kind of like a Twitter, Facebook hybrid. But now you go looking at their web traffic, and they've descended all the way down to just a little over 500,000 visitors to their website in the month of January.
Yep.
Which, if you had told me that this would have happened back in 2017, I would not have bought that. And then another website that suffered a similar fate is parlay.com, which was a Twitter alternative that basically the conservative establishment, the GOP establishment, tried to tout as a Twitter alternative for quite a while back when it came on in 2018. And they really made pushes in 2019 and 2020 to make Parlay like this huge Twitter alternative that everyone should go to. And, basically it was meant to displace Gab. And then their website got taken down, I think, in 2021, right after the whole J6 PSYOP thing. And it kind of died a death after that and never really recovered. They have dipped all the way down to 887,000 site visitors in the month of January this year, after they hung around the 1.5 to 2 million visitor mark for the last couple of years.
It's crazy.
And then we have Bastion.com, which is like this blockchain, decentralized social media platform that's, supposed to be like this based on new innovative technology. And after it had some initial growth for a while, it started to surge all the way down to 1.5 million site visitors in the month of January. Then, of course, there's Getter, which is the one run by Jason Miller. That's more of a literal Twitter alternative. And they had quite a bit of traffic going for a while back last year. But yeah, they've started to fall off the cliff to the point where now they only have just barely over 3 million site visitors in the month of January.
Yeah.
And then Donald Trump's social media site, Truth Social, that started out pretty good, especially last year. But now it too is suffering the same fate, and it's even down below 6 million site visitors in the month of January this year, after it was around 12 to 15 million site visitors for much of 2022.
Damn.
Yep. And then there's Gab, which is basically still at the top of all the alt tech sites in terms of web traffic and a social media site, but even they've suffered this big loss in traffic because they've dipped all the way back down to 8.9 million site visitors for the month of January this year, which is a figure they haven't seen literally in years. And in January of 2021, as you may recall, Gab actually had 50 million site visitors visit their website that month, especially after Trump got banned from Twitter. And then the last 2 years and change, they've gone from having 50 million site visitors to their website that month to dipping below 9 million site visitors in January of 2023. That is a 92% drop in web traffic over the last 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
And it's funny because if you look at Torba and his marketing and his propaganda, he wants you to think that Gab's the future and Gab's, this growing, thriving social media site. And yet it's dying just like all the other alt text sites that we've brought up so far, which are the mainstream, I guess, alt text sites at this point, mainly because a lot of them are propped up by the GOP establishment. And
That's mainly what it was a lot. Just had a lot of influencers and stuff to point it to it,
And then Gab for a long time held itself up as the free speech anti-establishment website until Torba and his crew started engaging in all of the same behaviors that they were condemning a couple of years back. So the alt tech scene is a bit of a mess, especially when it comes to Twitter alternatives. And all the websites are dying. And as Josh and I have exposed on our respective channels the last couple of years, the reason why they're dying is they're not the free speech social media sites that they portray themselves as to you guys. A lot of them have hate speech policies in their site. They have policies that say, oh, yeah, we can censor you even if you aren't violating the rules. And so because of stuff like that and because of actual censorship that they've engaged in over the last couple of years, all of these websites are dying, especially after Elon Musk took over Twitter and basically made it his shop for, social media. And that is what brings us to Loop today. But before we talk about Josh's social media site Loop, I think it would be interesting for Josh to explain the journey for Loop, because as Josh knows, and as I know, but you guys may not know, Loop did not start out in its current form or even of its current name. It started out as something called Buddy List. Why don't you tell us the history of that and how you got Buddy List to become Loop over time, Josh?
Well, Buddy List was just something. It was, for one, it was a good SEO name at the time because everybody was familiar with AOL and all that stuff. So it was like a hit. It was actually really a hit, and so many people tried to buy that domain. I got the buddylist.co domain. So I immediately wanted to build a social network on top with that domain. So I was like, I looked for the Oxwall open source script, and that was actually the best one out of every single one that I used. And we're talking all the way back 2014. I haven't tried any of today's social network scripts, so I can't speak for any of that today. I don't know how good they are. I don't know what they are compared to Oxwall, but Oxwall was what I was using at that time. And it's probably what I would go back to if I wanted to start doing it that way again. I eventually, it became too expensive for me to run by myself. I had a business partner, but he never paid anything. And so it was like I was the only one flipping all the bills. And so I just had to end it. I had to cut the cord, and we just rolled over to Mighty Networks and let Mighty Networks now start doing all the heavy lifting for me.
So what is Mighty Networks, just so you can let the people know?
Oh, people are starting to get familiar with what Mastodon is. It's basically the same exact concept. Mighty Networks is another node hub place. You could create your own network, your own social net, and they got a lot of pro features, packages you could buy for businesses and enterprise stuff like that. All these different features, mobile app features, everything else, and they do all the maintenance, the server stuff, and the administration for you. They do all that for you instead of you having to do all that stuff. And all you got to do is just pay the the bills at at the beginning of the month. Pretty much, that's it. That's all you got to do, and you got to maintain it, and just make sure it's stays as social as what you could be. And that's the beauty part about it is you're allowed to bring your own domain and everything to it. I think obviously I think Mastodon lets you do that, but this was a concept before Mastodon. I think Mighty Networks existed before Mastodon, and so I think it's why I went to it at that time.
So, since you brought it up, social media sites like Gab and Truth Social and Brighteon Social and Post and many others, they all use variants of Mastodon to build their websites.
Yeah,
Now, what is it about Mastodon and Mighty Networks that made you say, you know what, I don't want to be a Mastodon based site like all these other people. I want to go with Mighty Networks. What
Mastodon, what I would say would be probably like the WordPress.com compared to WordPress.org. Like instead of you hosting your own software, they're the ones hosting it on their servers instead. So it's like the more commercial version, basically.
Hmm. So, I mean, what specifically is it about Mighty Networks and how it works and
I,
functions that makes it better than Mastodon? Is it just the expenses part, or is there more to
well,
it?
I mean, yeah, like I'm not the one that's maintaining the code anymore. So now they got their own security teams, they got their own network administrations to make sure people aren't abusing the servers. They got people keeping an eye out for child porn. They got people for everything that's in place, and all I'm doing is just paying the bills for it instead of me hiring my own team, my own staff, and everything else. I think this is actually a pretty neat way of doing it. This is actually a genius way of doing it. All you're doing is paying the bills basically, and then you get, you could do whatever you want. You're the owner of it. You could advertise to everybody, but the important role is you're creating a community for people to be able to communicate with each other. An open platform that you're in control of, that no one can take away and say, "Hey, you're not allowed to do that."
Hmm. Very nice. Now, you brought up bringing your own domain to the site earlier. I know that when I was creating my own social media site, Creation Social, I actually was toying around with the idea of using Mighty Networks to build it before I decided to go with the open source social network. Uh, is there something about having a domain that because I know if Mighty Networks, if you don't bring your own domain, they provide one of their own.
Yeah,
What's the
yeah,
difference
it's
between having
definitely
their domain
it's
and having
it's
yours?
it's definitely different laws and different legal things. All like I don't think it's like mentioned, but it really is. This is how it works. So like if you do the free package, for example, for Mighty Networks, and you're on their subdomain, they're in control of everything you do. They own that mightynetwork.co. That's their domain. So you are a part of that. They own you. So if you bring your domain to that now it's your policies, your FAQ, all that stuff, and you're in control of what. So like you're the actual accountability basically. So you could say Section 230. No matter what Mighty Network says, you're saying this is what I'm doing. This is my business, and this is what I'm doing, and this is how I'm using it. And as long as I'm not editing or modifying anybody's content, then it runs under Section 230.
Yeah, can you actually tell the funny story you once told me about when Mighty Networks tried to engage in some content moderation on your site because of the whole domain issue?
That's the first day Mighty Networks learned about what Section 230 was. when you are the domain owner of the physical thing that people are coming through, you're the gatekeeper basically. You're the gatekeeper of that domain. So now it's your rules. No one else can tell you what you could do in your garden, basically.
Because wasn't there some kind of video that you had shared or that someone else had shared about Mrs. Clinton that they tried to get taken down?
I
And
can't remember what it was, but yeah, it was something. It was something definitely about the Clintons. I don't know if it was the Clintons itself or if it was Podesta. I remember it was something about them though. It was definitely like about the WikiLeaks or something. And I remember, yeah, and I was like, well, no. And then I showed them what Section 230 was, and then they was like, oh, they presented it to their legal team, and the legal team was like, yeah. It's that's just how it is. That's the internet is the ocean. There is no country. You're literally floating on an ocean. So whatever you establish is your property, and there's pirates all around you trying to take whatever you can. So you got to police it yourself. You are the responsible person of that, and so that's what makes this all neat.
Isn't there something in the terms of service for Mighty Networks that says that as long as you have your own domain, they won't interfere in content moderation on your
Correct.
instance?
Correct. Yeah, because that takes them away from the Section 230. If you're on their free terms, then they're what they call it, a publishing platform, I guess.
Hmm. Very good to know. So, if you're watching this, guys, and you're looking for an alternative to Twitter that is far more allowing of freedom of speech, then you don't have to worry about Mighty Networks censoring Josh's Loop instance because of the fact that he has his own domain attached to his instance.
And it's they're good people. They're really good people, a good team, and I've been working with them for a long time, and I haven't had any really thing funny. Like anytime anybody had something wrong with their account, I'd get I'm able to message with all the administrators in the back end there, and so I can shoot them a message at any time, and I can say, hey, such and such is having problems with their account, and they can immediately fix it. They can come back and restore it. They can fix it, and there is no, oh, we did this. There is no decision making over there. It's literally usually a glitch. Most of the times, 9 times out of 10, you triggered something that was a security rule or it was a glitch. you know. And so just get a hold of us and we can fix it. That they do not make the decisions; it all goes through me. So whatever happens to your account, even if it's a legal decision, I still have to be notified and make the final say on it before it goes through.
Very fascinating. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and put this bad boy up on the screen. Can you see Loop?
Oh yeah, yep.
So this
There
is
it
what
is.
Loop looks like on the desktop version. But I will say up front that there's more than one way to get this thing on your phone as well. One thing you can do is you can download the Mighty Networks app off of the app stores, and then you can access Loop through the Mighty Networks app, which produces a really good app for Loop that I would say is basically as good as Twitter for all intents and purposes, even
Yeah,
if it doesn't look quite as pretty.
yeah. They did pretty good. Yeah.
But if you're one of those people who's like, ew, I don't like apps, I don't want to deal with the app stores, especially since they're so tyrannical. Well, the good news is in recent times, Loop, and I guess the entire Mighty Networks website network, was reformatted to be a progressive web application. So if you want to, on your smart devices, you can literally go into an internet browser, access Loop, and you can then install it on your device as a progressive web application, which in effect makes an app for Loop
Yep.
on your device without having to go through an app store.
Yeah, totally defeating the App Store. And this is the way it was supposed to be when they were first coming out with mobile apps and all these app services. There wasn't supposed to be a one store because that was what everybody thought was going to happen was they're going to control who could be in this store. They knew that was going to be a censorship tactic, and somehow when the Yahoo turned into Google, that's when everything changed.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that is pretty much when it changed. So we're on the main page of the website right now. I'm just going to go ahead and bring up my account, which you see I clicked on my little logo in the upper right hand corner. Click on my username, and then a little pop out comes out and it shows you your account. Got my banner, my logo, my brief description. I have 40 followers now on Loop, which funny enough, I actually have more followers on Loop than I do on Twitter right now.
It's crazy.
Which I've had a TTOR account on Twitter for quite a while now, and at one point I had like over 100 followers, but then they had a bot purge, and it purged like over 60% of my followers, and then I'm back down to like 38 or something like that now. But yeah, Twitter, a website with literally hundreds of millions, if not a billion users on it, even if some of them are bots. You'd think a site that big, I should easily have like hundreds, if not thousands, of followers on such a site.
You would think, yeah.
And then you look at Loop, which has just over 40,000 registered users at the time of this recording, and I'll show you later where I get that number from. A site that has just a tiny little fraction of users compared to Twitter, I have more followers on.
Oh, yeah. That's because everybody gets to see your engagement, especially if they're subscribed to your topics that you post to, or if they're just directly following you.
Mm-hmm. And we'll get more into that in a little bit. But then you can see on the account, aside from your followers and following and that stuff, you have your interests, your location if you want to give it. There's your personal links, which is where you can put the links to like your video sites that you're on or your other social media accounts, which I demonstrate here on the screen. And then there's a community quick post option now, which we'll get into in a little bit. There's topics that you can follow. And then there's even groups like Facebook, which I'm in too right now, but I don't really use them, but that's not important.
Yeah, and you could make your own groups easily.
Yeah.
And there's an easy feature that actually will let you grab your Facebook user groups actually and bring them over. All they got to do is click the link that it generates for you, and then it creates the account off of their Facebook data, and boom.
Yep. And now in the upper right-hand corner, once again, there's an invite button, which allows you to invite people to join the site. And there's like a whole reward system for people who get a lot of referrals to Loop.
Virtual rewards.
Virtual rewards. And then there's the Messenger, which is just like Facebook, where you can chat with other users directly on the site. Or like Twitter, I guess. I mean, everyone has direct messaging at this point, but if you're like a Twitter DM kind of person, Loop has that too. And then, of course, there's your notifications, which work very well, especially if you're following a bunch of topics or you're following a bunch of people. And then, of course, we're on the global feed. There's a discovery page, which you can use to look at the top spaces and upcoming events. And then there's an events section where you can literally create events. So, like, if you wanted to say, hey, on this day at this time, I'm going to be doing a live stream, then you would go there. So like, let's go to this one, for example. Little thing pops out, shows you the title of the event, when it's going to be, the time frame, repeats weekly on Wednesday. It's a live video. And then there's a hyperlink, which I presume takes you to the actual stream itself.
And you can also schedule actual physical events for people to go to with places, addresses, stuff like that too. And it pops up on here.
Yep, and then there's the upcoming events section of it, and then topics, which I guess is just a description box below this little box here.
Yep.
But that's how events work. It's a lot like Facebook events, but simplified.
Pretty much,
not too complicated. Now, when you're on the global feed, you can see everything, but you can't actually post anything. If you want to make a general post to Loop that's not topic specific, you go to this Loop post feed right here. And you basically have your status box where you can attach pictures or files. You can create polls, or you can put GIFs on there. And then you have your little emoji box right here. And then you could share links, obviously. So it's like your basic Twitter kind of, status box that you can use.
And chat's also built into that too. You see the chat tab?
Yeah, because you see there's discovery on the Loop post, and there's events, and then there's the chat. And then
and that's a group chat, so everybody that's in a part of the Loop, you're all talking to each other there. Think of that as a public space where everybody can say, "Hey, Bob."
And then I guess this page section is like the about page for Loop.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, the description of it.
Yep, which you can read at your leisure. But now, one thing that you guys started doing recently, I guess Mighty Networks and Loop by extension, is that now individual topics have their own feeds.
Yep.
So, like for example, you run your own YouTube alternative, Josh Shoe TV. Well, now there's a Josh Shoe TV feed specifically for that. So if you're a Josh Shoe TV user and you want to share your Josh Shoe TV videos on Loop, you would just do a status update where you share the link here on Loop, and then you would hit post once you've, as far as tags and whatnot, and then it would show up specifically in this feed, which would be great for discoverability. If someone's like, hey, I want to find new creators who are on Josh Shoe TV, they would simply go to this Loop feed and then they'd go scrolling through it. And if they came across your video in this feed, that's how you could get a new subscriber / follower from that.
Exactly.
And then, as you guys can see here on the sidebar, there's a whole bunch of different topics. Now, one thing I will point out, Josh, is that a lot of these alt text sites that became popular and are now dying, one of the things that they've always had a problem with is they've had a hard time attracting people who are not part of the independent news, independent content creator community that covers news and politics from joining and using the site.
Yeah.
So, like, you mainly get like the Styx Hexenhammers of the world, the Sargon of Akkads of the world, the Computing Forevers, and all those guys. They tend to bring their followers to these sites. And if you're into those communities, these sites are great to be a part of. But if you're looking for more normie stuff, you're generally going to be lacking in content on those sites. But here on Loop, we got a lot of different topics that would appeal to normies as well. I mean, you have the alt media stuff like citizen journalism or alternative news, U.S. news, world news. But if you're like into science, there's a science feed. If you're into astrology, well, there's an astrology feed. If you're into UFOs, there's a UFO feed. If you're a conspiracy theorist who's obsessed with exposing crisis acting, there's a crisis acting section. If you're into general cooking or culinary arts, there's a feed for that. If you're into comedy, feed for that. If you're into fashion, there's a feed for that. If you're into documentaries, feed for that. If you're into beer and wine, there's a feed for that. If you're into general family-friendly stuff, there's a family feed. If you're into pets, there's a pets feed. If you're into cannabis, there's that. If you're into racing or parenting, if you're a parent and you're looking for tips on parenting, the parenting feed might be a good place for you to share tips and acquire some. There's a racing feed if you're into racing. If you're a person who's a fan of mixed martial arts and boxing, feed for that. You got a music feed. You got a memes feed. You got a how-to and arts and crafts feed. Do-it-yourself home projects feed. A hippie culture. If you're into murder mysteries or mysteries in general, you got a feed for that. If you're into animation, well, there's a feed for you there. If you're into space or MK Ultra conspiracies, there's a feed for that. Heck, even if you're into creepypastas, there's a feed for that too. There's a history feed if you're into history. There's a classic cartoons feed. There's recipes feed if you're into sharing food recipes or baking recipes or whatever other recipes you're thinking of. If you're into religion, there's a religion feed. If you're into Christianity, there's a Christianity feed or Christian feed down here. If you're into music production, there's a music production feed. And if you're into flat earth even, there's a feed for that, which is great because flat earth community has actually been targeted pretty heavily by big tech over the years, especially YouTube. And there's a fake news, false flags feed. There's a photography feed if you're into photography. If you're into the outdoors, there's an outdoors feed. See, if you're into movies, there's a films feed that would be just for you. If you're into cryptozoology, which I know some people who are cryptozoologists, there's a feed for you guys. There's an archaeology feed for forbidden archaeology. There's a poetry feed. There's a general food feed. A literature feed, which is for like books and stuff. And yeah, as you can see, there's just a whole bunch of feeds. So if there's any topic at all that interests you, the odds are that there's going to be a topic feed that you would be interested in because that will cover specifically the topic of interest. Now, I don't think there's a gaming feed on here.
I think there is.
There is? I noticed an entertainment feed, but I've never noticed a gaming one.
There isn't, then I will make it. But yeah, that was going to be another thing I'm going to throw out is, if there's something in here that you don't see and you want, that's the coolest thing about it. You can just tell me, and I'm like, yeah, I'll add it.
And so, because of these topic feeds and because of the wide variety of topic feeds that exist on Loop, there is plenty of stuff here on Loop to engage not just the people being censored on the internet and the alt media people crowd, but there's also enough stuff here, I think, to appease the more normie crowd
and,
that's
and
interested
it's
in
all
more normal
searchable.
things.
It's all searchable. That's the best feature about this. So think of this as a database that you could dump all your information of everything that you figured out, stuff that you're trying to collect or build together, or anything you're trying to put together. You can now have a place to actually store it, and it's always going to be there. You can access it by your phone or whatever, and there's a search right there at the top. So as long as you tagged it or titled it, you're going to be able to find it.
And that is music to my ears. And then one of the new things that was also done with Mighty Networks and Loop that wasn't the case before is, oh, hold on, let me go to this one right here, bringing up this post, because it used to be you couldn't really search tags, but now you can, right?
Yep, correct.
So, like, let's say I click on live stream here. Oh, look, it takes me to a feed just for the hashtag live stream.
Yep.
And then if you got these different filters, so if we eliminate the space for Joshu TV, here we go. So now it's bringing up all kinds of stuff.
Exactly.
Woo-hoo!
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
So now you're open to more expansion instead of just being in one place every single time you post.
Yep. So searching feeds by hashtags is a thing on Loop too, which is really nice because a lot of hashtag stuff gets censored on Twitter, and having an open version of that here on Loop is really nice because you don't have to worry about, oh, that topic I'm really interested in that the powers that be don't like. Oh, I don't have to worry about that
Exactly.
being hidden from me and therefore not being able to find anything that's tagged with that.
Exactly. You can even make password protected groups. So if you have like actual really important stuff that you're doing, you can actually really you can use this for your business or whatever because it's an actual commercial service. So it's always going to be up 99.9% uptime guaranteed. It's always here.
Yepers. And then if we go back to the sidebar here and we go down below the groups, you'll see that there's 4 links in particular that you should be interested in. The one that says mail is actually a link to Joshu Mail, which is your email service that you provide, Josh.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the one to your Shoutcast account, I think, News Talk Radio.
Yep.
And then if you're one of those people who likes playing Facebook games or anything like that on big tech sites, we got a link to games, which is actually a link to the Joshu Games website, where you have all kinds of internet flash games that you can play on any and all devices, including desktop computers.
Yeah.
And
it's all the stuff that we was able to get out of the flash ever since they decapitated the flash. Oh, I hated that. But yeah, everything's HTML5 now, so all these games will play on all devices.
Matter of fact, I'll bring that page open right now just so you guys can see that, yes, Joshu Games actually does exist. You got all kinds of games. You got skill games and quiz games and match 3 games for girls, I guess, as a target demographic. Racing, car games, jump and runs, puzzle games.
Pretty neutral. Now, 8-ball pool, everybody loves. I play that all the time.
And yeah, sports games is my favorite category. I tend to play 3D basketball, and I tend to play the 3D bowling game. And I also have played the archery game a lot in the past.
Oh,
I even played it for my gaming channel at one point. That's one I've been meaning to go back to doing because I really did like it. I just got to find time and motivation. So yeah, there's the games. And then, of course, there's the TV link, which just takes you to Joshu TV, which is Seeking the Truth's video sharing site that he made that's a YouTube alternative.
That's
so basically
always under attack, right? Right at the moment when you want to show it. Oh, look at that. It still loads. All right, good. All
right. So yeah, there's a lot of things you can access through Loop aside just from the things that Loop
literally,
does.
I'm looking at a monitor to my left, and I see a giant CPU spike, and I'm right when you're trying to go to it. I'm like, oh, perfect timing, but it's still loaded fast. That was nice. That was nice.
And then
that was nice.
and since I brought up the other ones on screen, this is the Joshu Mail one I mentioned earlier. Although I think they need your help though in creating accounts that work, if I remember right, or is that
Yeah,
changed recently?
you just submit a form, and then I get back to you with your account information, and then from there it's yours. It has a reset password link and all that.
Goody. And also, if you create a Joshu Mail account, you'll also be able to access the Delta Chat instance that you host, right?
Yes. Oh, I love Delta Chat.
Yeah.
Basically Telegram, though without the middleman, the man in the middle, basically, and it's using your email for the chat server.
So if you have Joshu Mail and you're part of the Delta Chat that Josh made here, your Joshu Mail account would be the host for all of your messages and whatnot that you send and receive on Delta Chat.
Yep.
And then you can also set those messages to self-destruct after like a week, for example, so
Oh
that way
yeah.
it
Or
doesn't blow up
anything. Yeah.
so that way it doesn't blow up the storage space in your email.
Exactly.
Yep. But anyway, let me go ahead and stop screen sharing for a minute. Ho-ho. There we go.
I know I have so many things to advertise. It's just crazy. It's should do it in multiple videos. My search engine, that one is a beaut.
And then I see Godless Girl in the comments section. I'm going to go ahead and send the link to this room in case Missing Mod or Godless Girl want to join us. Josh, I'm sure, is open to taking questions from anybody at this point regarding Loop or his other services.
Yeah. Yep. I'm open.
So we'll just go ahead and wait a few minutes. Uh, so you mentioned how when I tried opening up Joshu TV from Loop that there was a CPU spikeage, you said?
Oh yeah. It's all. I mean, I'm always under attack, and now it's the feds. Um. So I I don't know why. I don't know if it was Rupert Murdoch telling Tucker what he was able to show, or Tucker actually made this decision. But Tucker only shown certain bits of these videos that I don't think did justice. And so I released the actual meat and potatoes that should get everybody out of that jail that's locked up right now, including the person they call the QAnon guy. Federal agents were the ones that they broke into the window of the Capitol. They're the ones that kicked open the door and waved everybody in. And now, today, the FBI facial recognition software confirms they were federal agents.
Yeah, and of course, if you said that at any point in the previous 2 years, you would be labeled a conspiracy theorist. But heck, what do we know?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm seriously considering getting Mark Dice's T-shirt that says the conspiracy theorists were right.
Yes.
That's been happening so much the last like 7 years that frankly it's getting disturbing at this point.
I know. Well, this is literally what we've been seeing, throughout so many years. It's been in micro doses, though. Like we've seen the PETA people, with the animal rights stuff. They're the ones that purposely are like causing fires and disasters and all this stuff just to say that, oh, this is what could have happened, you know. And then you see the wildlife people and then the agricultural people doing the same thing. And then you see the climate people, they start doing the same thing, lighting forest fires and everything else. They're all copying each other. They're creating their own fear just to keep everybody in fear. And this is what's happening. And it's been going on. And I'm glad it's finally someone ripped the Band-Aid wide open. Everybody's now seeing it for what it is.
Mm-hmm. So I was just checking up on the feeds. Seems like we're still going strong on the old tuber. But yep, I'm probably gonna wait a few more minutes, see if anyone else joins. But yeah, it's a time to be alive, that's for sure.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's
Because
crazy.
back in the old days when TV and radio were largely controlled by, corporate media, and we didn't have all this internet stuff to talk with each other, it was a lot easier for them to control narratives and to
Yep.
control what people see and what they don't see. But now with the internet and all these websites of our own that we're able to make, all these social media sites, all these video sites,
And us
it's
being
like
able to just communicate with each other.
they can't control the narrative anymore. I mean, even as they've
Exactly.
tried to take control of bigger tech sites in the Silicon Valley area that are the most popular at the moment, all these other sites exist now, and there's lots of people using them. And so
Yep.
they'll never have total control over all the information, I don't think, for a long time. At least not until they find a way to control everything all at once, which I'm sure eventually they'll figure a way out to do that. But until then, they're never going to do it.
Yeah, I think we finally got enough people that are understanding exactly what's been going on. That was the problem. The problem was no one believed what we were saying.
Yeah.
That was the biggest problem why we could never move forward. Now that we got a huge, like 98% of everybody seeing everything now, I think we could finally do something. I think this is that what do they call that? Overturn window or something like that.
Yeah, Overton window.
Yeah, it's definitely that moment, I think, and we need to take advantage of it.
Yeah, we definitely do. As far as the future of Loop goes, is there any plans to add some new exciting features in the near future?
Video calling. I'm trying to get video calling. If we could get video calling and PGP encryption and maybe like clean up the mobile app a lot more. I don't like the mobile app. I really don't. If they could do that, I could see it being a nice, like a very good comparable to Twitter. Like it really is, and the video calling would definitely put it over the top because Twitter don't have that yet. So I think that would literally put it over the top.
Very interesting. And while we're here, do you have any new features planned for your other websites that you run?
Well, we just do them as we go. We got the thing we're trying to do with the virtual user account thing. The people that's been banned from YouTube, like I got, my YouTube channel subscribed. So we're trying to make like some kind of a thing called your valor that they took. Your numbers that you earned throughout the years of your social build up. We're trying to make it a way to where that's like onto your channels now. That way, it's a part of your actual subscription count, but it's not your actual. I don't know, but it's gonna be a cool thing. We just gotta figure out a way to keep it separated to where it's like how you described it. You want to be able to do the statistics and be able to keep track of it like that without it getting all jibber jabber mixed up.
Yes, that is definitely very key. Well, no one has joined the stream yet, and I don't have all night to do this. But I've very much enjoyed the stream so far. It's been great going through Loop and giving everyone the lowdown on how your Loop site works. And I gotta be honest, at this point, with all of the alt tech sites like Gab and Getter and Parlay and Minds and True Social and whatnot starting to go down the tubes in terms of traffic, and Twitter is still going strong as far as its traffic goes,
Yeah.
even though it's just as censorious as it was before Elon Musk took over for the most part now.
It's slowly getting better. Slowly.
Well, they had
Very
some
slowly.
real setbacks recently. They're starting to censor conservatives and Trump supporters and pro-life people just like old Twitter used to.
Yep.
Pretty much the only thing that's different at this point is they occasionally will do a fact check on something like what the current administration's people say, which always causes them tissy fits because they're not used to it. But
like that when the administration said that several officers died that day at the Capitol, January 6th.
Even though no officers died that day and it was just one person, a civilian.
And I don't know if you've seen it, but I released the body cam video of Brian Sicknick today because everybody keeps like, I don't know why they keep like stepping over this one, but I think this is what caused him to have that stroke. He literally he used some other officer's taser, and then bumped into another officer in a commotion. It triggered it, and it shot into his balls, his groin area, and you can hear him actually scream. He goes, "Ah!" And that video is all. I gotta upload it. I think this is something that it's weird how they wouldn't say that this is what happened, and they told the world that he got smashed in the head with a fire extinguisher. I think someone needs to like look into this.
Very much so. Well, I think we're going to call it good here. It's been a pleasure having you on the show again, Seeking the Truth, and it's been a pleasure having you give us the lowdown and the full explanation of Loop and its history and how it works. And hopefully, any one of you guys, viewers watching this after the fact, hopefully you will start using Loop for yourself, because as we saw earlier in the show, there's a lot of different spaces and topics for people to use, not just those who are more active in politics or active in current events and its coverage, but just active in general stuff that you'd be interested in, like cat videos, cooking videos, outdoor stuff, entertainments, movies, books, sports, whatever.
It's definitely like a library of stuff that you could put your favorite things in, and that's what I like. Think of it as your digital binder. Anything that you like, bring it to your account on Loop, and it's always going to be there.
Yes, it is. Okay, I think that's all she wrote. And I'm going to go ahead and transition us out of this show, but feel free to stick around after the show, Seeking the Truth, because I'm sure we got things to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
So, with that, I bid all of you viewers farewell.
Peace.